afternoon. Welcome to Standard Time on the East Coast. I hope everybody survived that. I'm Dr. Frank Vernito, Chief Scientist with the Institute for Digital Transformation. Usually I'm behind the scenes, but our last rapid research, which I led, had some exciting responses to it. So we thought we'd do a digital dialogue on that. And who else to host it but the researcher himself. So people who don't know me, I spent my undergraduate degrees in political science and spent some time in law school. And so I have a unique appreciation for Election Day. Today is Election Day in the United States, and I hope everybody has exercised their right to vote. Anyway, we'll be talking today about trusting AI for cybersecurity. We did, as I said, we did rapid research on that, and you could see the results of that in our member portal on the website. If you're not a member, I encourage you to go ahead and sign up, and there's your link to do that. So we're not going to go over that report because you can read it. What we'll do is decided to bring on some industry professionals to talk about this very interesting topic, especially with generative AI in the area of cybersecurity. So I'd like to bring them on now. If you don't mind, I'd say let's bring on 𝗙𝗿𝗆 𝗏, Information Security Executive with over 25 years of experience in cybersecurity and risk management. Paul, welcome. I guess go ahead and give us a 30-second spiel about Paul.
Oh, thanks,
other than you spilled coffee on your laptop.
Yeah, other than that one, just risk management and good business continuity practices. I'm waiting for the doorbell to ring and my computer to show up, the replacement. But yeah, I think you summarized it well. 25 years. I've had the distinct privilege of being a CISO 3 different times, being a management consultant, and also a cybersecurity leader in several disciplines, and all in highly regulated disciplines. So it's been a lot of fun, and glad to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So let's bring on Josh, Managing Director of Penetration Testing at Schelman. Josh, welcome. Likewise, 30 seconds on Josh.
All right, thanks, Frank. My name's Josh 𝗙𝗿𝗆, and I'm located in the greater Philadelphia area. Almost been with Schelman for almost a decade, coming up just across the 9-year mark. Before that, I was working at various locations in Delaware on the offensive security side of the house. So most of my background is coming from an attacker's perspective. And I'm very excited about the topic at hand. I personally use generative AI all the time, and the landscape is just insane from what an attacker could do.
You mentioned a magic geographic area, and that would be Delaware. I'm sitting right now in Fenwick Island, so I'm not sure where you worked in Delaware, but
I was right in Wilmington.
Oh, okay. The other end of the state there. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's an hour. It's actually almost 2 hours from me. So Delaware being a very small state, you can't imagine anybody being 2 hours from anybody. But that's about as far away as you can get. So welcome. Finally, let's bring on Chris Hallenbeck, Chief Information Security Officer at Tanium. So, Chris, same question to you. 30 seconds. Go.
All right. Thanks, Frank. I'm Chris Hallenbeck. I'm the CISO at Tanium. I've been here just about 9 years now. I started out my career actually in higher education as a system administrator, fell into incident response during that time, and it just slowly caught the security bug more and more, doing incident response over that time. Ultimately culminating in being the chief of operations, building the incident response program for US CERT, what is now part of CISA, and learning that I like the proactive side of things, trying to break that reactive cycle of incident response.
So sounds like you and Josh have some things in common from a professional standpoint. So that's pretty cool.
Yep.
So welcome, Chris. Great having you. Thanks for agreeing to do this. So I'm going to ask each of you to respond to this, and I'll let you know who being the 𝗙𝗂𝐁𝐲 professor, I'll just go ahead and call on somebody. So, two-part question. What is your overall opinion on the use of AI for cybersecurity, especially generative AI? And do you have any experience with it? So, um, we'll start with who we brought on first. So, Paul, why don't you weigh in on that if you don't mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's early days, right? So it's really time. I think sessions like this really bring up, okay, what have I done and what have I done lately? Because I think, as Josh said, things are changing very, very rapidly. So what might be new and relevant a few weeks ago, even it might not be that much. My interest in AI is very similar to other new technologies that come up. So the areas of risk and governance to me is it's a lot about that for me. So and specifically the governance of risk is really identifying and then fully understanding what is underneath that in terms of risk, and then
Mhm.
making decisions about what to do with that. So I'm once again fascinated, like I was by cloud, but like I was by big data, like I was by lots of new and burgeoning things. That how can we use this for really good? Beyond that, I do have some experience and a lot of thoughts in terms of things like threat and vulnerability management, third-party
Mhm.
risk management, program management, policy, all those kinds of things, risk management. So I'll leave it at that. But we are in exciting times. But to me, the whole area of trust comes up, and I know you're going to want to talk about that more.
Yeah, anything. Does anything scare you? I'm a skeptical kind of person with regards to these kinds of things. Does anything scare you about?
Oh, lots scares me.
Go ahead.
I've probably done 1,000 third-party risk assessments in my
Yeah.
professional career, and each one of those is a new risk assessment, a new situation, and I've probably seen it all.
Yeah.
And underlying AI is all of my data potentially, or all of my questions, all of my interactions, and what's happening with that data. So the area of due diligence and being um, not risk averse but risk aware is really, really
Mm.
important. And to me, again, that's how I step in, is not by jumping in with ChatGPT and here's all the things that I can ask and do, but asking questions about, well, should I use ChatGPT? Should I use
Yeah.
Copilot? Should I use, whatever else, because underneath that is really what's important to me.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. ChatGPT. My daughter's coming off our health insurance because she's aging off, and I told her to check ChatGPT for the best alternatives. Anyway, enough of that. Josh, same question. What are your thoughts and overall, and do you have any experience in your field with using AI?
Yes, yes. I think it's I think it's going to be a game changer. Clearly, what you're seeing already through generative AI solutions, ChatGPT, Anthropic's
Hmm.
Claude. I mean, these are easy things that you can point to show somebody to be like, oh, look at how amazing this is. And yes, you could ask it a very basic question and you get a very basic response. I had a conversation with my mom actually about this exact topic. I'm like,
Yeah.
look at how crazy this is. And she's like, yeah, it didn't give me what I wanted. I don't see what the hype is. And I'm like, well, you're just not prompting it correctly. And of course, that wasn't probably the best
No. No. No.
way
No.
to,
Not.
to handle that. I'm like, come on, mom. But from an attacker's perspective, we're using it all the time, but with a twist because you have to be careful again what you're providing that model. Like, what's your enterprise uh, risk acceptance around the
Hmm.
privacy issues? like from a pen tester's perspective, we can't just be throwing client data into a generative AI solution.
Right.
But we've
'Cause
messed around
you're
with other things.
exposing it basically at that point.
Right. You don't
Yeah.
know if it's going to be trained on that information. Now
Yeah.
they're saying that if you interact through an API, it won't be trained, but it could be held onto for 30 days for security testing. Like, who else can see that? So
Yeah.
it starts your spidey sense to start tingling when it's like, oh, this stuff is really cool, but how can we use it in a safe way to get the most value
Right.
from it?
Right. Excellent. Yeah. That's one of the things that scares me is exposing data that you've yeah. That's one of the things that scares me. In any case, Chris, same question to you. Overall thoughts and what are your overall experiences, if any?
A little bit of apprehension, a little bit of cautious optimism. Uh, for me, this is the new flash in the pan, right? This is the new marketing buzzword. If you don't have the word AI somewhere in your marketing slick,
Okay.
you're failing apparently. So what I see right now is a gold rush of everyone trying to sell AI.
Right.
Is it really AI? Is it effective use of AI? Or is it just going to leave people high and dry at the other end of this and even more reluctant to use it in the long term?
Yeah.
So that's one of the concerns I have on that side of things. People also see AI as this be all end all. It's going to solve all of their problems. There are inherent limitations to it. Being careful on what you put in as a prompt, what data you put in, where is that data held? Is it going to be used to train things? Could it leak information? Could an attacker manipulate that AI such that it becomes blind to the data that you want it to actually analyze and alert on or do things of that sort?
Fascinating.
Those are all aspects that really scare me, but also there's that benefit, right? The ability to automate mundane tasks, very repetitive things. That's where I think the biggest initial value should come from. Things where it's simple data, simple decisions. Those are things I don't want skilled people doing. Why should I
Right.
pay them to do something repetitive when I can pay them to do something that's interesting and also, by the way, likely retain them because they're engaged in their work, and I can get them to take on that other pile of tech debt that I already have anyway. In answer to the have I used any of it? We actually have started to kick the tires on several different ones. Unfortunately, because of that crawl, walk, run approach that some of the more competent players are taking with this, they're not where we need them to be to make a dent in our existing mature processes. So we're still exploring it. We're still keeping an eye on it. But the current offerings in the security space, specifically in the security space, haven't really addressed our needs yet.
Yeah. What I got out of your discussion there overall is number one, we're definitely in a hype cycle, in your opinion, and when it kind of fleshes out, we'll get to some contagion where it's really put to good use. And also the I took away the that it's agnostic to good or bad. In other words, my example of a hammer, you could use a hammer to build a house, or you can use a hammer to knock down a wall, right? So it depends on how the tool is used. So that's what I got out of your points there. Very interesting stuff. So let's go on and talk about does AI have a place in cybersecurity responses? And the example I use is maybe some sort of staff augmentation. Can I start to automate some, as you were saying just now, some mundane, low priority incident responses, and then eventually have my AI learn as it that maybe it can do more sophisticated stuff. So I'm going to go in reverse order on that, since Chris, you seem to touch upon that a little bit. So what do you think about that? Can we automate those mundane things so my staff is not, why am I doing these priority 5 incident tickets? I mean,
if they're really low priority, they're also often low fidelity. So that's the other part of it. When you have a high priority, it's because you It's going to either impact a system in a definitive way. You have a high confidence that that thing really is of concern.
Mm-hmm.
The lower priority tend to be those lower fidelity things. So how do I figure out which out of the tens of thousands per hour, if you're lucky it's that low, of those types of events mean something? And with AI, the potential there is for me to aggregate lots of smaller, lower fidelity things together to gain a higher confidence picture. Almost no action that happens on a single endpoint or multiple endpoints in an environment. You don't have an attacker get on one system, do one single thing, and that's it. There's a series of events. And so if I can start to chain those events together on a single system or across systems, I start to gain a higher confidence that, oh, this isn't Joe sysadmin doing something. It's a pen tester or a bad guy doing that thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I think
Josh is in there doing that, right?
being able to bubble up those, turn lower confidence things into moderate or high confidence and putting those in front of the analyst to do that final sense making, that's where I think it's a good start.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. So Josh, I'm gonna go to you on this one. So he mentioned, like, is this somebody trying to come in? If you're doing some pen testing, and can you tell if an AI is handling what you're trying to attack and responding, and then you both learn together? I'm kind of calling an audible to our script here, because I found that a little fascinating. I mean, can you teach the AI to handle new and interesting things? And who learns faster, the pen tester or the AI? Go.
I think it's a constant cat and mouse game, just like between attackers and EDR vendors, AV solutions. As soon as somebody gets a cool bypass, somebody's got a signature for it. I think it's going to be the same thing with AI. It'll be interesting as we learn these various security products, like what are they actually paying attention to? And from an attacker's perspective, is there any way to do some type of prompt injection to get it to, like, feed in the data that we're controlling and then bypass its internal commands? So even if you see some malicious activity, could we somehow get a message in there, and then when that AI solution would parse it, it would do what we say versus doing what it's supposed to do?
Yeah.
Josh,
Go ahead.
I wonder whether or not we get to a point where we get a chance to feed or take a system that has an AI defensive mechanism on it and launch all series of different types of malicious activities, probing, what have you, on that system, and have a machine learning algorithm that just watches what does the AI on the other side do? When does it intercede? When does it block something? When does it generate an alert? And do that across multiple operating systems and systems in general, and build a model of what that AI defensive engine does, so that you know what paths will be successful. You're relying on the ingenuity of a human being to spot the weaknesses. ML is a fantastic way of surfacing those little holes that aren't obvious to a human, but once the human sees it, goes, oh, of course, why didn't I think of that thing?
Right.
That, I think, is going to be an interesting application.
And that's also another point to take away, is that we shouldn't let large language models or any generative AI solution just have complete control. There needs to be some kind of human spot check to be like, okay, this is what I've got data wise. Does this look good? So it can help cut down the fluff, but you still have to have someone, an expert, and that's how it could benefit us on the pen test side too. Like automatically think about doing port scans and screenshots of web apps, and it takes those screenshots, like a multimodal model, one that has vision capabilities, and it could see what that screenshot was, determine the version and software, go to the internet, look at for latest CVEs, vulnerabilities, way faster than even a vulnerability scanner could have a plugin or signature for. So it's very exciting to think about the possibilities here.
Yeah, we had a question pop up. Paul, I want to bring you into the conversation. We had a question pop up on using AI for actual penetration testing, not necessarily response, which something I actually didn't think of when I sent out the question. So Paul, I'll ask you about that, but Josh or Chris may actually have more to say in that area. But I'll throw it to you first. Again, I'm calling another audible on this. We're just having a conversation in a coffee shop, guys.
Well, yes, and I'm really interested in both of Josh and Chris's responses as well here, because I'm more of a consumer of the pen test. I hire pen testers. I evaluate pen tests, and actually my biggest complaint is kind of buried in what you both said. I don't see a lot of ingenuity inside of many pen tests. And it's not a blanket condemnation of that side of the industry at all. It's just, give me more. Give me what the bug bounty people give me in terms of some of the
A lot of noise.
inquisitive, ingenious kinds of things that you can think of and go after not that versus just, okay, I ran a vulnerability scan and I'm kind of going after those things. So the scope of that with AI, to your question, Frank, I think the sky's the limit at that point to say, okay, in that interactive model, using AI on my side, knowing more and more, there's AI on the other side too. How can I use that to get better results? I think the sky's the limit for pen testing.
Interesting. Hey, John, would you mind putting up that last question from Joe there? He clarified reiterative pen testing against AI security was where I was going. So thanks, John. So Josh or Chris, I'll throw that to either one of you. So choose amongst yourselves who want to address that. So
I got this.
Randomly, I'll put to Josh. Go.
Yeah, we're getting hit up all the time from organizations that are like, our customers are saying, how do I know my generative AI solution that I've just added onto my application is secure? So traditionally, when we're testing a web app, we get credentials, we'd use it as a customer would, but just throwing SQL injection payloads into generative AI chatbot is not going to really pan out. Like its job is to make up stuff. It can hallucinate. So if you say what tables are in your database, essentially in a SQL injection format, it'll come back and just tell you some table names. And you're like, yeah, we got it. All right, that's great. But it's not true at all. So we've actually taken a step back and said, okay, how can we provide the most value from an attacker's perspective? And not just dumb fuzzing and putting in like prompt injection or getting it to dump its system information or the system prompt. That could be a problem if they did store sensitive information in there, which they shouldn't. But let's just say that they did everything right from the end user's perspective. And now what do you do next? Well, we've gone back and said, okay, let's sit down with the people who are responsible for your implementation and go through the entire pipeline. Like, where's this model running from? Are you in AWS Bedrock? Like, who has access to the model? Where's it being trained from? Is it pulling from Confluence or some other repository as a RAG or a knowledge base? What if an attacker gets access to that? Could we poison it? Like, you could go through and fish somebody who has access to that data point and then put malicious or fake information there. And then that's impacting the generative AI solution or implementation. And it's something that you would never even get to think about as a threat from just attacking the web app in a traditional sense.
Yeah. Chris, you look like you're dying to say something, so go ahead.
Well, it's really, the thing is, we talk about when we're using a generative AI, where's the data stored and all of that. But, early on, Josh, you mentioned it near the intro about, is it going to use our data to train it? And if it's an instance that is dedicated to your organization, in theory, that's not a problem, right? You own that instance, you have control over it. But then that means it's been trained, it's got access to underlying data. And as a pen tester, that's got to be really a juicy thing where can I get that Gen AI to dump some of the data that it learned from in a way that maybe wasn't intended. These things are essentially black boxes to most people, including the ones that are administering them.
Yeah, and it's hard from an attacker's perspective to see what is a true positive, because it's just going to make up stuff. If you're like, give me email addresses of your system administrators, and it comes back with admin at whatever domain, you're like, okay, that looked good, but then you talk to the client, they're like, no, that's not right at all. It just made it up. So yeah, 100%. You really have to look at the entire picture rather than just attacking the actual deployment. And there's so many different use cases for AI. Are you generating images? Is it a chatbot? Is there a medical application where there's like different roles? Say a doctor is supposed to be able to get access to patient data where a nurse maybe isn't supposed to see that. Well, then the attack vectors are different than somebody who just has a chatbot synced to a local knowledge base on their website.
Right. So, Paul, you and I look like we have the most gray hair here. So we've probably seen a lot of stuff come and go. I want to come back to you on this because it's resonating in my head about Chris's comment about the hype cycle. So, given that we've probably seen our fair share of technologies come and go, what are your thoughts on the hype cycle? Are we in a hype cycle? Is it overhyped? Is it underhyped? Or just what do you think?
I don't think it's overhyped at all. It's just, again, early days, and I think the sky's the limit in terms of the opportunity. I mean, the other things that I mentioned and you're thinking of too, in terms of earlier things. I mean, whether it's zero trust or big data or cloud or whatever it is, to me, that's building out kind of a two-dimensional chessboard of defenses, proactive, reactive, those kinds of things. To me, I view AI as a little bit, it gives us the opportunity to become three-dimensional in our thinking in terms of, okay, how can I use AI, to serve, whatever the use case is. We're bound only by the imagination of the use case, and what we can do. But then, understanding that at one point we're training bare metal to do things. It's like training a robot to do something. So we're somewhat bound in that area as well. So I've got a lot of promise in my head in terms of how to use this as a tool in some ways, like these two gentlemen are, but in many others. One around the mechanistic side of it, the one I was thinking is in third-party risk. I mean, I use tools for very simple things like, hey, if they had a breach that wasn't apparent to me, it's like, okay, that's a very simple tool prompt. But taking that and going further with it, well, given that they've had it, it's not even public. What's the background information for that will help me know whether to make this bot kind of alert come at me with really high priority, or just keep it at kind of a moderate priority. So again, I mean, I think we're bound by the use case, and I'm very excited.
No, thanks, John. You wanted to put up a question. Okay, since we're at the end of election season, hopefully, we're going to consider this almost like a press conference. So each of the candidates here will have a chance to address this. Organizations, obviously, Simone is from across the pond, given the spelling of organizations, have benefited from the advantage of professional hackers. So how is the hacking of AI theory versus practice that is different for organizations to be aware of now in regard to this? So given that question, I'll give you a chance to digest it a little bit, and I'm going to flip a coin and ask Josh to handle that. What do you think?
So I mean, so to understand a little bit better, that was that question more towards traditional penetration testing? Can you bring that up one more time?
Yeah, go ahead. And Simone, if you're out there, if you want to clarify, that'd be fine, and we can post that up for our panel.
Organizations be. theory versus practice. I mean, I think it comes down to the individual risk or threat scenario for everybody. That's the biggest takeaway, I would say. That change your mindset from just attacking AI or AI red teaming, which it is unfortunately. yeah, yeah, thank you for that.
Somebody
So
walked up to you in the coffee shop and said, "Hey, I got a question for you." What? I just wanted to vent the coffee. Anyway,
exactly,
right.
exactly. But the hardest part about this whole thing is that everybody's implementation is different. So the threats that impact you and your organization are going to be at a high level pretty different than like Facebook's implementation of an AI solution is going to look different than LinkedIn's. And they've got so many things interacting and intertwined. Really, you need to see more than the final deployment is what I'd say on that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I think Simone put something a little more clarity on that. So maybe that helps. So Chris, you want to say a few syllables on this
Sure.
particular topic?
So I think it comes a couple different ways. One is obviously, being an attacker trying to manipulate or exploit an AI in some manner. That there's certainly that side of things. But then there's the other, which is the attacker using AI as a tool in their trade, if you will. It can be anything, and we've seen this now for a while, using LLMs to perfect spear phishing messaging and things of that sort. It used to be that you could spot the poor grammar, the obvious, non-English native English speaker way that they structured sentences,
Right.
and everyone in any training, spear phishing training that you do is like, oh, look for the bad grammar and you're done.
Yeah.
But now any of these attackers can put their stuff through any of these AI tools and come out with something that is darn good. In fact, you could tell it, what industry you're trying to convey this message to, and it'll tailor it. It'll put in the right types of buzzwords in the right kind of place, generally speaking.
Right.
It will get past that human factor.
Yeah.
And that's the key, right? You will need to gain foothold. There's always going to be, can I directly do a technical attack against something? But if I can get someone to give up their credentials or give up information directly, all the better. And we're already seeing it. We're already seeing attackers use AI to perfect their social engineering.
Yeah.
Well, that's
and now
I'm
outside
sorry.
of just phishing as well. So we're getting requests. We've done some amazing things around voice cloning or vishing.
Yes.
So calling the help desk. Like right now, there's essentially zero shot models where you can take up to 15 seconds of somebody's audio from YouTube and legitimately clone their voice. So we could have almost a soundboard of pre-canned messages and calling up a help desk and clone the CEO's voice and be like, "Do you know who this is? Look at LinkedIn. They're posting that they're talking at a conference. I'm at this
Right.
conference right now and I just lost my phone. Reset my password." And it's going to sound like them as well.
By the way,
Right.
this session that we're doing right now, all four of us are a perfect target. We're sitting here. We're generally in a fixed position.
Mhm.
We're talking in sound bites over time. This entire session would be ideal to train a model to do a video deepfake for each of
Yeah.
us.
There's services like HeyGen that are very easy and high quality output. So it's kind of scary, but it's cool at the same time. So
I think that's part of what we do when we summarize the actual meeting, and I'm sure John is kind of smiling as producer behind the scenes because he knows what I'm talking about. We use it for goodness, not evil.
yeah,
So your thing about it was easier to see look for the bad grammar and whatnot, and you could tell if there's some sort of fish going on, but. I'm semi-fluent in Italian, and so I can always tell when something's been translated from Italian to English because it doesn't quite match. Here we say, "How are you?" but literally translated from Italian, it's "How you are." So you could see. I could look at a website and say, Oh, that's translate. That's somebody used an English translation for that. So, let's move it along just a little bit here, Paul. So, I'm going to ask you this. I think you're more from on the inside as opposed to the outside doing pen testing or whatnot, but you're probably involved in that as well. But as regards to generative AI, do you trust the AI to learn your vulnerabilities and threats, to format proper responses and maybe learn on its own? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, in regard to the last question, I feel obligated to say
Go ahead.
I am not a bot, but that's what a bot would say. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
so you'll never know. So here I am. I've thought about that question actually quite a bit. Quite a bit of my background is specifically in the area of vulnerability management, and we've got lots of tools, and I've been on one end of thou shalt not have any outside place that will absorb all of our vulnerabilities, to the other side of it of, okay, I'm jumping all into your tool, and I'm gonna I want it to help me determine what. So in regard specifically, do I trust generative AI to with my vulnerability data? It depends, and it's all under what's under the surface, right? So what's under the surface are all of the elements that lead up to that place. What have I seen in the news? What about the pen tests? What about the assessments that have been done? What are those kinds of things telling me? What are the guardrails and protections that I've been able to put in there? So once I've answered those successfully and convinced myself and convinced others, maybe in privacy and legal and the business side of it, that the risk is worth it, then yes, I'm going to take that and use it for its proper usage and be able to get something out of it. And I think using that kind of a construct, I mean, there's details inside of that. I want pen tests done. I want red teaming done. I want architectural reviews done. And it's got to be continual. Maybe my biggest concern in all of this that I keep thinking about is the biggest risk that we typically face is the risk that we don't know. So the usage of generative AI in our companies that we're not aware of, that maybe we haven't done an inventory of, or the use of AI tools, again, for bad on the outside coming in, and just our alarm systems and our protections aren't really there for us. Those again are the places that make me lose the most sleep, right? And make me want to get proactive about digging further and digging and finding where those places are that we might be susceptible to, AI leakage or active threats or even automated bots that are coming at us.
Yeah. You said something at the top of your comments there about, you are not a bot, but that's exactly what a bot would say. So that's
Right.
that's a great, I was looking at that comment offline, and so yeah, how do we know I'm not a deep fake? I mean, are we living in the Matrix right now? I mean, I might not even know that I'm not a deep fake. Maybe I'm actually a deep fake, but that be that as it may. So, over my career, I've been faced with many different things, many different technologies, and when something comes into play, one of the questions that comes up is, okay, so how's that going to change my job? What else can I do? Or will I lose my job? Will I have to be retrained? And so I've very rarely has it turned out bad. You always find something better and cooler to do. And a quick example from my perspective is we collect data, and part of that data in survey instruments is collecting verbatims or user comments. And in the old days, I would take those comments and work my brain and code them into categories. And then, but now I can just take those comments and put them into an AI and say, give me some themes. And it comes out with that for me. Now, am I cheating? No, I don't think so. I developed the questions, I collected the data. And real quick, on our last survey, when I got to SurveyMonkey, they haven't built in AI. You want to do themes here? And I said, oh, okay. Well, then it's actually made its way into that tool. So the question for each of you is, and we'll start with you, Chris. Is it what professional jobs will change or alter as we move along? Should anybody be fearful for their jobs, or what will the human now do? So that's really I want to go. What will the human now do?
As for what jobs, the answer is yes, all of them. Everyone is going to be impacted in some way, whether it's someone who does maintenance on aircraft or someone who does utility work, public works projects like piping under the ground. Every one of those things, there's a vast trove of data about typical failure rates, given the substrate of the soil, and we know that there was last construction or tunneling of fiber optic lines through this area, and within X period of time, we know that we're going to have a pipe failure as a result because the ground has been disturbed. There's all sorts of pieces of information that we could gain insights about to do a lot of this. We should be able to know where we best place our people to be proactive and do that early intervention, so that it isn't a bigger effort to fix something or change something later on. Deconfliction is another area. Paul, you had mentioned around vulnerabilities. Classically, everyone asks the same thing every Patch Tuesday: which machines do I patch first, and which patches do I apply first because of what priority? And that's highly variable according to the organization. What's the severity of the vulnerability? What's the typical complexity of patches for that version of operating system and application stack that sits on top of that operating system? Does it tend to come back after a reboot or not?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of things. And is this system exposed to the internet? Does it handle sensitive data? There's all these variables that are applicable to a given organization. And if I could feed those in, then the AI has the chance to say, here's our recommendations for what things you should tackle first. The answer might be just go apply all the patches all at once, or no, here's the systems you want to apply it last to, because we know that those are going to be the systems that are more cantankerous than others. Right now, it's based on experience. People, the graybeards that have been sitting inside of an IT organization for the longest, that just know the history of some of those systems and just know tacitly, they just know that, that one's going to be a problem. We're going to leave that to last. I think AI has a real potential there to help people aid their decision making. Again, back to what Josh said, still a human in the loop in a lot of cases, but really aid that process.
Well, I want to be cognizant of time. So let's wrap this up with going around the horn, and I'm going to give each of you a chance to give us your final thoughts, skepticisms, words of wisdom. And Chris, since you have the big screen there, why don't you go ahead and start it off so John doesn't have to move people around?
I'm going to summarize with where I started: cautious optimism. It is right to be cautious. It's right to ask all of the questions that we've been talking about here. What type of data is it going to consume? Where's that data going to live? What control do I have over it once the AI has had access to it? And then, what ways could it be abused? Could it be used to force me to make bad decisions, invest in the wrong ways in infrastructure projects or whatever? Could I actually bankrupt an organization by slowly shifting their decision making in a different way? Those are all the negatives in that, but those are the things that, that risk aware, to what Paul said. You have to be aware of what could happen so that you can make the best decision for your organization. AI is here to stay. It has been actually for a long time. It's just getting better, smarter, faster. So now it's just figuring out.
Does that scare you? Does that scare you, getting better, faster, smarter? I mean, almost like the Star Trek M5 computer, right? I mean,
it gives me pause. I mean, anymore, your phone can do all sorts of smart manipulation of photos on the fly.
Yeah,
the compute power is in the palm of our hands now. So yeah, it gives me pause, but also, like you said, optimism. There's a lot of strong benefits that can come from it too.
It's the hammer thing. It could be used for evil or niceness, right? That kind of thing. Yeah, my speaking of the smartphone, I take a lot of pictures of stuff, specifically food, and sometimes something is in the shot. And my son showed me this thing you could do on an Android. It's called Object Eraser, and you could just go select it, and it'll just erase the object from your picture like it was never there. And I'm like,
oh. iOS has that now too. So
oh, excellent! Yeah, I didn't like my thumb in there, so I could just take that out. It was really pretty cool. So I use that all the time because, yeah, there you go. Object erase me. Paul, I'm going to give you the floor. Give us your final thoughts.
Well, if I want to get scared, I mean, that's been there a long time. Isaac Asimov and George Orwell have scared us for decades, right? And we can apply that here in terms of the worst that could apply to man and machine, that man versus machine. But I also started with a place of cautious optimism, and that's kind of where I am as well. For as much as I do get concerned about, where is my data and what have we done, in terms of turning that loose, even unconscious in knowing that, that data or images or conversations might become part of somebody's, LLM someplace. I mean, I think we've all had the experience. I mean, I've turned off literally every listening thing in my house, and technology, phones and whatever. And I just remember this was 10 years ago, talking with my wife about a dress she wanted to buy for a wedding. And sure enough, on my feed, in 2 hours,
my gosh.
and that was 10 years ago. Where are we now? So I think the opportunity is ripe, though, for right. I think the opportunity is very ripe for security organizations, for companies, vendors, to really build something that's better, because we do know that the bad guys are taking advantage of this right now, and I think they even typically have a bit of an edge coming out first, because they can use very specific attack vectors. But let's use it in reverse to help ourselves and to again make better for what we have for our companies.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh. You're batting cleanup here. Go ahead.
That's fine, Frank. So I'm all in on generative AI. I'm a huge fan. I think it's amazing. I think it's moving so fast. Like, I think it was even this week, or maybe it was later last week, with OpenAI saying they're going to allow search within ChatGPT, and then Google's like, oh, you can use search within their product, and then Anthropic releases the ability to control your desktop machine inside of a Docker container. So now you can interact with, I think it's Sonnet 3.5, their model, and actually say, hey, go and do this. And then it goes and does it within a containerized environment. There's other threats around that. Like, what happens if it downloads malware in that machine. But that's for there's layers of security controls. And if you're at a point where you're in an organization where you're going to onboard generative AI or turn on any kind of solution, you just got to have a self-plug here, a penetration test
Yeah.
or a red team assessment on your entire organization to see what threats are applicable to your specific use case.
Yeah.
So
That
Threat modeling is a thing for a reason.
absolutely. I would say I kind of share some happy medium there with all of you, and I'm kind of 50% in on Simone's comment. I'm not be afraid, but be very afraid. I'm just afraid. I won't say I'm very afraid. And getting back, Josh, to your penetration test, everybody needs that. In a prior life, I was in charge of stress testing or load testing systems before they went to production. And, I would break things, throw users at it using particular software, and the executives would be all despondent. Well, you broke it. I said, no, you don't understand. This is good.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. I mean,
that doesn't always go over well on the pen tester
I
side.
found this for you. And they sat back and said, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I guess you're right. I said, you hired me to do this and I did it. So you don't want to put a system out there that's going to break it, for users, right? You don't want that. Well, I'm gonna weigh in on my final thoughts, and they're very, very simple. I'd like to thank Josh, Paul, and Chris, and John behind the scenes for producing this digital dialogue, and for everybody who is watching and listening. Thank you too for tuning in. So I hope you will enjoy the rebroadcast of this on our YouTube channel, probably by tomorrow. And John usually puts that up, but I'm putting him on the spot as producer. But I would like to thank everybody for today. There you go. I knew John would do it. He's my man. So I want, again, thank you, everybody. And thank you for participating in this digital dialogue. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining Digital Dialogue. Look for more episodes at noon Eastern Time on the first and third Tuesday of every month. Can't join the live session? You can watch the replay anytime on our YouTube channel.